We're familiar with the end product. Deadly anomalies, dangerous mutants, anarchists, and bandits. All of them go on to persist in a radioactive hellscape in Eastern Europe. It's 2012, and you're an amnesiac tasked to kill someone you don't know anything in the slightest about. Right away, there's a sense of nostalgia with everyone using PDAs. Remember those?
This is your personal PDA. This useful device will help you survive in the zone.
Not really. From the very beginning, we have a captivating story, a fantastic soundtrack, stunning visuals, and are introduced to a number of faces, some friendly, and others not so much. Traders prove to be as central to the economy as they are to the plot, driving you forward to the CNPP faster than you can sell a Gauss rifle for 800 rubles. I still remember the crushing feel of the Agroprom underground, the bloodsucker that appears out of nowhere, the military base we crawl out into, the documents we have to find, and the head-dizzying sprint from Agroprom to the bar, not turning back once. I was simply too afraid to, and wanted to get to safety. That was my first playthrough of Shadow of Chernobyl. Let's take all these different elements and combine them together. The bloodsuckers, the blind dogs, the flesh, the whirligigs, the skin-peeling Röntgen, the soundtrack that makes you want to give up and stop moving at all. It's no wonder this game became the blockbuster that it did. Now there are for sure some things refined and refreshed in later games. But this is where it began, and it did take quite some time. Is that why it succeeded? The length of time in development? Perhaps it was THQ taking the reins. Perhaps if each Stalker game took as long in development, each of them would be appreciated the same. Nonetheless, we are where we are, and we stand where we stand. Let's talk about the dreams for a moment. These add to the non-stop head rush. Someone is calling out for Strelok. There are rats everywhere, somebody's shooting. This person wants to find Strelok. In another, we discover that someone, probably Strelok, is wounded, recovers, and goes to the north. More and more of these dreams happen until we get to the center of it all. They're not just a one-off thing. These were uttered in the very first lines of the game itself.
This one seems to be alive. What a lucky guy. At least death would have saved him from the dreams.
It ties this mystery and intrigue into it. It makes you want to know more. What happened? Who is Strelok? Why does he have to die? Why can't I remember anything? What is this bizarre tattoo on my arm? The questions go on. Maybe that's an essential part of the story. The questions. None of the sequels had this burning fervor to discover. Neither of them hit as hard as SOC. In fact, this is the original reason that Stalker 2 didn't come out in 2012. Sergey wanted a game that matched Shadow of Chernobyl. The team gave him something resembling Clear Sky, again, another faction suitor, and he discarded it. Can you blame him? This game has unmatched atmosphere, unmatched soul. Restock, the megaphone that doesn't shut up, the arena where you can win money and fame, or death, the many labs you have to fearfully stumble into and run quickly out of. The Brain Scorcher, which sounds eerie in name alone, and the many monolithians guarding it until the end. And finally, Pripyat, the ghost town. It has abandoned streets and buildings, anomalies and mutants at every step, not to mention monolithians and Gauss rifles. Shadow of Chernobyl dared to challenge the player, in more ways than one, and when the player comes out on top, they feel exhilarated, rejuvenated, successful. They end up wanting more from a game studio stuck in development hell for ages. So what does GSC do? They release Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat in the next 2 years. Yes, one can say that the gameplay is dated, and the shooting terrible and angering experience, but experiencing the lore and getting to really dig in makes up for it. Hiding in the bar for safety and dreading going back out is integral, as you might not know what's out there. Not to mention the endings. 7 different endings, of which the majority of them are fake, and only 2 are true. Can you imagine that much effort put into a scenario not even canon? Isn't it simply breathtaking? The artifacts were a bit of a rough draft in this game, with actual artifact detectors coming later on. but they were still nothing to scoff at, with their many abilities and detriments depending on which you choose, to the player. A combination of endurance artifacts can have you running for eternity, some to boost your carry weight, others to boost your health. Of course, there had to be balance to even out this system, and there was. Just think about it. Everything culminated together to such a degree that nothing was up to par against it. None of the other games have you peeled out of a death truck, barely alive, scrambling to find out anything about yourself. There's a squad that used to be yours that mysteriously perished. All of them. A doctor you ran into. 2 graves identical to each other, with no explanation. And yet, no other game had such troubled development and issues entirely. Not to mention a whole rework all by itself some years ago. Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat weren't worse games than Shadow of Chernobyl. They just weren't given enough time to work with them. Maybe, with all of this time invested, Stalker 2 will blow us all out of the water. Of course, you could draw parallels between Strelok and Scar, both of them being injured and recovering at the beginning of the games. They're both tied to one another, as Scar has to eventually stomp Strelok, but he isn't able to in time. They fight, buggy or not, and we get Shadow of Chernobyl and Call of Pripyat as a result of this. There's also the inspiration behind it all. Roadside Picnic, the book, and potentially Tarkovsky's Stalker. Both mention a zone and have weird things happening. There's parallels here too. Nothing could have prepared us for the release of this game, or the release of it at all, being regarded as vaporwave for the time. And nothing would stand alongside it as an equal, save for maybe Stalker 2, but that's 15 years later. Clear Sky and Call of Pripyat each have their own downsides and their own upsides. They're their own games, of course. What is totally undeniable is that Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl made a big splash and has big shoes to fill. Will they be filled in November? We'll see. Do you have any ideas for why this game was such a blockbuster? Any points, any comments to add? Anything at all, please do so. If you happen to be of the opinion that Shadow of Chernobyl was worse than the other two, underperformed in some ways, please speak your mind. In the end, what's happened, happened, and we're all waiting for November 20th. If there's any points I missed, glazed over, or neglected entirely, please let me know.